Madam President, a recent study from Harvard suggested that the actual death toll in Puerto Rico as a result of Hurricane Maria could be as much as 70 times higher than what was previously reported. In fact, the study, which was released 2 weeks ago, suggests that the death toll could actually have been in a range from 800 all the way up to close to 8,000 deaths. That's compared to the official FEMA count of 64. Recently, I was with the former governor and now father of the present governor, the former governor, Pedro Rosselló, and he shared with me that a George Washington University study is underway to more accurately count the deaths resulting from the hurricane. But there's no reason why there should be, among U.S. citizens, such a discrepancy in these reports. And the latest findings are just another stain on the federal government's overall response to the ongoing disaster in Puerto Rico, which has not been too stellar. The people of Puerto Rico are our fellow American citizens. They have a right to know exactly what happened on the island as a result of not just one massive storm, but the second one had hit as well. They have a right to know exactly how many of their friends and neighbors lost their lives as a result of this disaster, and exactly what the federal government is doing to prevent such a tragedy from happening again. And that's why Senator Harris of California and I have introduced a bill to create a better way to track the number of deaths caused by a disaster. The legislation would require FEMA to work with the National Academy of Medicine to develop a new uniform system for local, state, and federal officials across the country to use more quickly and accurately to be able to determine the number of deaths by a disaster like Hurricane Maria. Not only will this bill help to provide some semblance of closure to the families affected by devastating events, but it'll also ensure that the areas that are hardest hit by these disasters are getting all of the disaster assistance that they are entitled to, including funeral assistance, which can help uninsured families afford the cost of burying their loved ones. This legislation that Senator Harris and I have filed is just one more step in our overall effort to help folks recover from the storms from last summer. And I'm urging our colleagues to work with us to get it done. But Madam President, the people of Puerto Rico aren't the only ones still working to recover from last year's storms. And while we are now officially already in June in the midst of this year's hurricane season, there are still too many communities in Florida that have not received the hurricane recovery funds that Congress passed back this past February. Hurricane disaster assistance appropriations. It's June. We passed it last February, and it's still not out the door of the agencies. That's 122 days. That's about 4 months Folks are hurting. They'd like to have the disaster assistance money that we appropriated. And these communities, this is unbelievable. They're not just waiting for money from Hurricane Irma from last year. They're waiting for Hurricane Hermine and Hurricane Matthew from 2 years ago. This senator has repeatedly called on the administration to do more to expedite these funds to do for those who need it most by getting the funds to them. However, our calls, our requests, they go unheeded. We have fishermen and farmers whose livelihoods are being threatened, and their assistance is being slow-walked. Some of whom may have to close up their businesses if they don't see relief soon. Specifically, communities in the Florida Keys were especially devastated. The eye of the hurricane went over about 19 miles up the chain from Key West. Those on the northeast quadrant of the storm got it the worst, around Big Pine Key. They're still waiting for some of their assistance that was due for that hurricane last year. There are homes that are not repaired, and there are canals that are still full of debris. And according to a recent article in the Miami Herald, only $600,000 in FEMA reimbursements has been deposited to Monroe County, which is the Florida Keys, so far. Well, that's just unacceptable. How are these communities expected to prepare for the 2018 hurricane season if they don't have the funds that they were due from a year ago? So I am again urging the Trump administration to see this as the emergency it truly is and finally release the funds to those who so desperately need them. These communities can't wait any longer. Congress acted, and now it's time for the administration to do its part. Madam President, I yield the floor.